Well, good afternoon to you. 406 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Dr. Carol Swain joins us this hour at 4:30. We'll talk to her about the latest involving the outgoing Harvard President Claudine Gay. You see, Dr. Swain, she joined us a couple weeks ago, and we'll get an update from her now. In the wake of Gay's resignation, Dr. Carol Swain had her work stolen by the Harvard president. And Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, is joining us at the top of the hour. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Some 60 congressmen, a little bit more than 60 Republicans, went to Eagle Pass, Texas yesterday in order to witness the border crisis for themselves. Here's a little bit of Speaker Mike Johnson.
The president can and should act now. This doesn't require legislation. It requires leadership. And despite the White House's claim, he has all the authority he needs right now under existing federal law to stop this madness. But the message his policies have sent is the opposite of that. It's quite clear. Under President Biden, America has laid out a welcome mat to illegal immigrants, smugglers, and cartels. He is responsible for the grave threat to our national security and our nation's sovereignty that these policies have created.
He's aiding and abetting that is an invasion into the United States of America. And, of course, he has the audacity to go to Valley Forge tomorrow to pretend like he is, carrying on George Washington's legacy, who was thwarting an invasion in 1777. But no. He's aiding and abetting an invasion of the United States as we speak. Here with more detail on that visit by those Republican congressmen is a reporter who was present for it yesterday. Julio Rosas joins us. He's the author of Mostly Peaceful with Julio Rosas, the excellent substack, and the author of the book Fiery but Mostly Peaceful. Julio, good to talk to you again, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Vince.
Give us a sense of what it was like at Eagle Pass yesterday. And is it true? I saw some reports that that illegal immigrants were relocated or something, that there were fewer of them yesterday where the Republicans met.
Yeah, it was interesting because, it was only 2 weeks ago where Eagle Pass and the areas that the delegation visited yesterday were completely overwhelmed with illegal immigrants. And that really wasn't the case yesterday, and for the past basically kind of week leading up to it. We do know that historically, whenever a delegation comes down to a portion of the border, obviously they give a heads up to Border Patrol, DHS, what have you, and it's very common for the higher ups to order the agents working in that area to kind of clear away and kind of make it look better than it actually is.
Yes.
But regardless,
it's part of a pattern. I remember they banned Fox from flying a drone over the border for a time.
Yeah. They put in a no fly zone for drones during the Haitian Bridge crisis temporarily. It was pretty interesting. But the delegation it's similar to all the other ones that Republicans have been on since kind of the start of the border crisis. But I would say that it is significant that the speaker at the beginning of the year, of this new year, heading into an election year, decided to take time before they are back in session to go to Eagle Pass. I understand that, there's a lot of eyebrows being raised among conservatives, like, okay, what is this going to actually accomplish? And that's something I kind of share sentiment with, because we have, there's with the looming budget battle again, and, people, some on the right saying that Republicans should shut down the government and kind of force the government's hands, since they hold the power of the purse, to not allow the funding to continue to happen to basically process and release all these people for another year. And then you just had whether or not Secretary Mayorkas is going to actually be impeached this time around with this new renewed effort. So really the pressure is on for Republicans to actually do something about it beyond just sending tweets. And as I appreciate people leaving the Beltway to see a problem, it's been done before, and it's been done pretty often. And so they're aware of the issue. And now it's up to them whether or not they're going to go back to Congress and actually do something about it.
Yeah, that's true. Although I will say, there is a tendency, and it's well earned for those of us who observe what's happening in politics, to become very cynical, because it seems like very, very little is done that's actually productive for the American people. That's all true. Then again, I prefer this visit than a bunch of congressmen standing on the steps of Congress wearing Ukrainian flags and telling us how we have to be obsessed with that rather than our own border.
For sure, I will say Congressman Joe Wilson, he had a Ukraine flag pin on his
Oh
coat when
my
he was visiting the
gosh.
border. So but at least he was at the border. At least he was at our border. I guess I'll give him credit for that. But you're right. It's just a matter of whether as something that I've learned just fairly recently with my own life. Follow through is very important, and this is just one issue. And really, what I am now telling people, especially as we're heading into an election year, is that should Trump, DeSantis, whoever Republican takes the White House this year, or inaugurated in 2025. They're going to have a really big problem on their hands just with this because it's not as simple as much as it is for campaigning. It's not as simple as just saying round them up, because half the battle is knowing where these people are, and that's just talking about the recent influx from these past 3 years of finding out where they are, what exactly they're claiming, and have they actually followed through on asylum processes. And what's not really being talked about is that we're going to have a whole new generation of DACA, with all the kids that have been brought over, young children that have been brought over by their parents through this administration, by their policies. And now, once again, we're going to have a whole generation of people who are saying, well, look, it's not my fault I was brought over. This
If Washington sells us out again, you're right, that we will. That's exactly what will happen. Illegal immigration will be rewarded yet again. But you don't have to round everybody. It's funny, a couple years back, remember when Mitt Romney was mocked for self-deportation? He said, well, then maybe they'll self-deport. But there is a kernel of truth in the idea that, look, if you have a system that makes it so that you're not able to take advantage of it if you're here illegally, then people will actually go back to their home countries. That can happen. And so, for instance, one thing you could definitely do is e-verify. Force employers to have to establish whether or not the worker they're hiring is eligible to work in the United States. And if they're not, they need to go. And they'll be foreclosed on being able to be gainfully employed here in the United States. So there are so many things that could be done above and beyond just ICE finding illegal immigrants and deporting them.
You're right. And it's just the problem is that I'm not sure half of the country is going to be able to stomach something as simple as that. Just because that's half the reason why Trump was having issues with trying to carry out his deportation plan when he was in office, and then it kind of fell into the beltway loop of just negotiations, and it just drags on and on and on. I think again, if a Republican takes the White House and they start taking action against it, there's going to be a lawsuit. There's going to be the bureaucracy dragging its feet on it, because the deep state is a real thing and they don't like Republicans, and it's just a matter of whether or not it's going to actually you can have someone order something like that, but it's a matter of the people actually carrying out those orders, or being hindered by the far left, because you can bet that the far left is going to mobilize to try to disrupt. They're already disrupting airports. So you can be sure that they're going to try to disrupt ICE flights.
Right, and so. Honestly, do you see any evidence that the Biden administration wants to slow down all of the illegal invasion we have going on in the United States? Because, you see the images from Texas. What I'm seeing is the Biden administration is ordering Border Patrol agents to cut open the Texas-laid concertina wire to allow more people in. So is there any evidence that they're actually trying to stop this?
No. And every single thing that a state has done, whether it be Arizona or Texas, to try to deter people from illegally crossing, the Biden administration has taken them to court to say, no, you don't have the authority to do that. And that's why it's a problem when you have a state trying to address a federal issue, or an issue that falls under federal jurisdiction, and the federal government doesn't want to actually do anything about it. So their hands are tied behind their backs, because they can try to do stuff at the state level, but the federal government is just separation of powers, right? The federal government just has that authority at the end of the day, and if they want to wield the stick to say no, you can't do that, they're going to do it. And so the Biden administration, since day one, they have not wanted to stop any flow of the quote unquote irregular migration. as they like to call it, and they want this to happen. This is not something that's happening to us. This is something that's being done to us on purpose.
Yeah, and then meanwhile they say that it's a part of global migration, and this is happening everywhere. But even that excuse is not flying on places like CBS this morning. There was a host, Tony DeCouple. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but boy, he deserves credit for what he did today, because Alejandro Mayorkas was on with him and talking about this effort to impeach Mayorkas that the House is taking up next week. And here we have Tony DeCouple pointing out that that Mayorkas is not actually talking about any solutions at all.
You're not talking about the fundamental point of contradiction. The Republicans want a stop to the flow with very specific ideas. You're not even talking about those ideas this morning, and so both sides are playing politics as they have been for a very long time. Secretary Mayorkas.
I would respectfully disagree with you. I would respectfully disagree with you.
We have to leave it there.
Yeah, and in addition, he also pointed out that, the Biden administration has just, from day one, has opened the floodgates here and allowed all sorts of people who don't even qualify to be here under our asylum laws to pour into the country.
Right, and that's the whole basis for the upcoming impeachment push from House Republicans, is that this is, like, the DHS knows that a large segment of these people that are claiming asylum, they would fall under economic asylum seekers, which is not something that we grant people to be able to say just on that basis alone. And it's very specific. And when you have people, there's been countless interviews with people who legally crossed and say, "Are you here to seek asylum?" And they say, "No, we just want to work," which is okay, understandable, based on where they're coming from. But if you want to do that, you got to go through the process to do that. You can't just kind of do it the way that they have been doing. So, again, this is not something that's happening just by chance or by accident. And you're right when it comes to their excuse of, well, this is happening globally. It's like, well, of course it's happening globally, because you rang the dinner bell, and the world is going to respond to that. And so it's very frustrating. It's very aggravating, as someone who's been covering this for a while and seeing nothing has changed, and knowing nothing is going to change, at least on a major scale for the next year. With the potential for it lasting another 4 years. And I'm telling you that if this goes on for another 4 years, it's going to have disastrous results for decades to come, because what we have already at this point in time is going to be disastrous for decades to come.
Finally, what are the odds, in your view, that Alejandro Mayorkas is impeached by the House? Did you get a sense yesterday from those congressmen?
Yes, and I'm writing a story about that on my Substack, because I was pressing members of the delegation. I said, look, a lot of Republican voters are upset that the first impeachment vote failed, and it was because some Republicans voted against it. They said that, well, it was mainly a due process issue, and so that's why these next set of hearings from the House Homeland Security Committee, that's going to lay everything out, that should kind of put their concerns to rest about that. So most of the Republicans that I talked to yesterday, they felt very confident that should impeachment vote come to the House floor, that it will actually pass.
Okay. All right. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, Julio Rosas, thank you very much. You can find him on the Mostly Peaceful with Julio Rosas Substack, where he produces so much great journalism. Thank you, Julio. Good to talk to you today, sir. Let's check in on the phones, shall we? Let's go to Danny in Washington, D.C., line 1. Danny, you're on the Vince Colonnade Show. Hello.
Hey, Vince. Happy New Year.
Same to you, Danny.
Biden going to Valley Forge
tomorrow.
Okay, whatever. Look, the guy's not running the country. Somebody else is running it for him. And I've got my conspiracy theories for that. But the fact of the matter is this: everybody's like, "Oh, well, George Washington this, George Washington that." Well, I got news for you. Why aren't the Democrats and the left going after George Washington? I ask this because he had slaves. Years ago, Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., wanted to dismantle the Jefferson Memorial because not only did he own slaves, he was sleeping with some, Sally Hemings to be more exact.
Right.
All right. That's what they did back then. Why aren't you going for the politically correct stuff now?
Yeah,
Why
right.
can the Democrats pick and choose their battles, and the Republicans sit there twiddling their thumbs, not knowing what to do?
Well,
I mean, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House,
yeah.
hit the nail right on the head down on the southern border at Eagle Pass, Texas. I mean, this has got to stop.
Yeah.
And we can't sit around and do this anymore. Now, I've said in the past, I'm not that big a fan of Donald Trump. I'll be honest. I voted for myself in 2016 because I can. It's called the write-in space.
Mm-hmm.
I voted for myself in 2020 because I can. Now, the fact of the matter is, people are like, oh, well, Bernie got cheated out of the 2016 election by Hillary. No dung.
Uh-huh.
Good save. But you could have written his name on the ballot. Huh? These idiots don't know you can do that. And they're Democrats or they're independents. And they haven't been taught that if your candidate doesn't show up on the ballot, you can put his name on it. It's
Okay, let me
line 11.
Okay, so hold up a second. So I was for a moment when you said you wrote in your name, Danny. When you said you wrote in your name, I was about to scold you and say, "Dude, you're throwing away your vote." But I didn't realize the direction you were headed. I didn't realize what you're really saying is, for our Democrat friends out there, if they have a candidate that they prefer, this guy keeps talking. I'm trying to talk. If they've got a candidate they prefer, then maybe they should write that guy's name in. So if they want Dean Phillips, write in Dean Phillips. Old Democrat. You don't have to vote for Trump. Just write in Dean Phillips. I like where you're going with this, Danny. I think it's a good idea. I appreciate the call. Happy New Year. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 4:34 here at News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Jason Miyares, joins us at 5 o'clock. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Well, the left is in an all-out panic that the president of Harvard has announced her resignation this week after she indulged calling for the genocide of Jews on her campus. She said, well, it would depend on the context, whether that was a violation of the code of conduct. And then subsequently it was discovered that she had plagiarized over 50 times throughout her academic career. Could be a lot more than that. Not sure at this point. In her resignation letter, she made no mention of her theft. But among the people she stole from is my next guest, Dr. Carol Swain. She's a senior fellow at the Institute for Faith and Culture, and she joins us on the phone. Dr. Swain, great to have you back with us. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
If I could, I just want to get, we talked a couple weeks ago about this when the news came out that she had stolen from you in the first place. What's your reaction now to her announcement this week?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that a letter from my attorney was delivered to Harvard today and by email yesterday, and we asked very specific questions of Harvard, and they have until Monday to respond. And the questions are just about their definition of plagiarism, and 5 very specific questions are being asked of them to clarify their position on Claudine Gay's actions. And so that's where it stands in that sense. But I can tell you that I was appalled by Harvard's statement and Claudine Gay's resignation letter because she did not take responsibility for any of her actions. By all accounts, she is a serial plagiarizer. The last count I saw was close to 50, if not over 50, incidences of plagiarism. And the very idea that she gets to step down, keep a $900,000 a year salary, and her teaching position when she has not acknowledged any wrongdoing. And part of the problem too is that part of the problem is that Harvard has tried to redefine plagiarism and to make excuses, and they too imply that it is the far right, that it's racism motivating the questions, rather than people who value traditional academic standards that would be expected normally of people who write.
Claudine Gay herself has alleged that she's being targeted because of her race. The College Board also at Harvard also suggested this as well in their letter announcing all of this. You have members of the left, a whole bunch of them, who are angry about Claudine Gay being displaced, I guess she's just moving to a different job, still being paid about $1 million, as you point out. But Nicole Hannah-Jones from the New York Times, Ibram X. Kendi, real name Henry Rogers, who's been a big pusher of critical race theory in the United States, and Joy Reid over on MSNBC, they're all saying that this is racism, that Claudine Gay is a victim here. What do you make of that claim?
Well, I mean, isn't that what they always say when it's one of them involved? Is there ever a different argument? Is anyone who's black on their side, are they ever guilty of anything? If they're held accountable, isn't it always racism? So it's nothing to make of what they have to say. I'm more concerned about the professors, white and black, who said they didn't have a problem with what she did.
Yes.
And some of them, she had plagiarized their work. They said it was fine with them. And I'm wondering how they're going to look their students in the eye the next time they have a student who doesn't play by the traditional rules. Or maybe there are no standards anymore. Maybe Harvard is signaling to the rest of the world that plagiarism is okay, or duplicative language, whatever they call it. I think that, I think that Harvard needs to be held accountable, that Harvard Corporation,
yes,
they need to resign next, and Harvard needs to do a national search for the best available person and try to find someone who will steer Harvard back into the right direction.
So the Harvard board, which is called the corporation, there is run by a woman called Penny Pritzker. She's in charge of the Harvard Corporation, and she was the Secretary of Commerce for Barack Obama. It's been reported, Dr. Carol Swain, that Obama was pressuring her to keep Claudine Gay in place. Why would Obama do that? To what benefit is it to Harvard, to black people, that Claudine Gay stay in place after having stolen the academic work of black academics like yourself?
Well, I mean, it wasn't just black academics. She stole from everyone. She had pretty good taste as far as the people she chose to
it's very diverse
from. Yeah, and so, but she is a part of the elite. It's my understanding that her family is one of the wealthiest families in Haiti. Maybe they know where I need to be careful, but we don't know where the Clinton money went. But she comes from a very elite background. She attended Phillips Exeter Academy for her boarding school education before going to Stanford, and she spent a brief amount of time at Princeton, and she got her doctorate from Harvard. So she's had a world-class education, and so she's part of the wealthy, affluent people. She's had a world-class education, and they protect one another. And so it's not about black people or true diversity. They have a different set of rules for themselves.
Yes.
They chose her a long time ago, and she earned tenure on a record that would not normally get someone tenure in the Ivy League, but she earned tenure on a weak record. Then she moved to Harvard. They fast-tracked her, and she becomes the president, but she is just an empty suit.
During her tenure and during the tenure of people like her ideologically, Harvard has become a very illiberal institution. In fact, in 2023, there was a survey of the students on campus, and they found that 30% of the students said that using violence to stop a speech on campus is, at the very least, rarely acceptable. In other words, in some circumstances, violence to stop speech is totally fine. It says 30% of the students on campus, and Harvard earned one of the lowest ratings for free speech in the entire country, according to FIRE, the organization that assesses these things. Do you think that could change, or is this still headed in the wrong direction?
It needs to change. In fact, even before the Claudine story broke and before she testified before Congress, I had been contacted by a Harvard student who who was trying to arrange a debate on campus, and his goal was to set up a debate series so you could bring speakers in to debate issues. And so he was trying to push back in his own way. And I've given interviews to several student newspapers other than the Harvard Crimson. The Harvard Crimson is like an extension of the corporation. They're part of the firm. And so they will put out whatever they think the organization wants to hear. But the other student newspapers, the reporters seem to be very interested in restoring the reputation that Harvard once had. And I say once had because I think that there will be lasting damage to Harvard from how they have mishandled this Claudine Gay situation. Claudine Gay should have been put on administrative leave and fired when it became clear that she had plagiarized. And she was not held by the same standard that would have normally applied to other black people without her background, as well as whites. Anyone else would have been held to a different standard. They would never have dug in under normal circumstances and defended someone with a record like that.
So you don't believe that she should still have a $900,000 a year job at Harvard right now?
I don't believe she should be on the faculty of Harvard based on the evidence. And I'm not sure she's Dr. Gay because there was evidence of plagiarism in her dissertation. And to get a doctorate, you have to defend a dissertation that has original ideas in it, and it can't have plagiarism in it. But they have redefined plagiarism, and she's made excuses for herself, even while saying she's committed to excellence. If she was committed to excellence and she's always put high-quality scholarship first, as she contends, then she would not be in this situation. I am deeply troubled that she has not even had the grace to step down and take the high road. She could have apologized. She should have stepped down and not allowed it to continue the length that it has. But she will go back to the classroom with this narrative that it's all about white racism. It's not about anything she did.
Would you like an invitation to Harvard's campus to speak to the students?
If they send me an invitation to participate in a debate or to speak there, I would consider. I was considering it before this happened. We were just trying to find a debate partner because on the left they don't want to debate, and so that was the holdup. They were trying to find someone who would actually debate me on diversity issues. Now it'll probably be harder.
Yeah. I have seen some on the left saying in the last 24 hours that it has to be a black woman to replace Claudine Gay. Is that in any way?
And I say why? Like why? I'd like to see them explain why it has to be a black woman. And I know what the answer is, that they see this as being about reparations. That this is the position is somehow owed to a black person. It's not owed to anyone. Harvard should stop the DEI nonsense, as should other institutions, including the federal government. And we know that with Biden, who has touted his most diverse administration ever, it's the most incompetent administration in my lifetime. So I think they need to abandon DEI and go back to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, non-discrimination, equal opportunity, outreach, and go back to compliance, not to this social engineering.
I don't think it's just me. I do think that this moment could be productive for our country in the sense that we could right the ship a bit, especially at these big institutions. And I remember when I talked to you 2 weeks ago about this, you said you were going to train your fire here on Claudine Gay because she deserved it for what she did to you and what she's doing at Harvard. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did because I do think that there is something good ahead if Americans who want to see excellence rewarded and succeed, continue to get some gain out of this.
Mm-hmm. Let me clarify a little bit. I care about the American higher education, and I think Harvard University itself is damaging higher education, and Claudine Gay is just a casualty of a system that promoted and pushed someone that was not qualified a long time ago. And so she, could have been a person that took the high road and, confessed her transgressions and apologized and asked for a second opportunity. She didn't do any of that. But you can't do a do-over. And the very fact that Harvard is trying to allow her to go back retroactively and change things from 20 years ago, it is ludicrous. And I hope that enough people see it's ludicrous that they don't let Harvard get away with it.
Right. My only point is that I hope that this has longer legs, that there are all sorts of changes made to these important institutions to make them excellent again rather than mediocre.
But Harvard doesn't seem to want to make itself excellent again, because they have, unless they fire that board, the Harvard Corporation, and put in a diverse new board of fellows, then they might bring about some change. But if they keep with the same old people, they will search for someone very similar to Claudine Gay. There's someone else to fit a DEI box. They won't be searching for the most qualified person. So at Harvard, it will not be turned around, but Harvard may become like Bud Light, and other schools will not want to emulate them. And so Harvard's becoming like Bud Light may lead other schools to do the right thing.
How about it? It really is. Well, keep giving them hell. Dr. Carol Swain, thank you very much. Really appreciate your time today. God bless you.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you. Again, Dr. Carol Swain, who I think in the end, if she keeps staying out there and keeps bringing it to Harvard, maybe some good things could come of it. And she's right. There's a shell game going on right now. I mean, Claudine Gay is staying at the university. She's still getting paid nearly $1 million a year. She has fewer things to do now, but she's still getting paid all that money. And the ideology is not dead. It's very much alive and well at Harvard. And Obama's commerce secretary is running the show over there. Isn't it funny how much Obama is screwing everything up? I guess funny is not the right word, but Obama pulling the strings at the White House, and half the staff is a bunch of Obama loyalists that are running the show there with Biden and running the show at Harvard. And it's wild. Also, maybe coming up in the program, I do also want to mention the revelations from the Epstein files, to the extent that we have any revelations at all. It's coming out. A lot of it was stuff we knew. But it is interesting, the number of characters, people, and power centers that all intersect between places like Harvard and Obama world and Jeffrey Epstein's freaky stuff. It is crazy, actually. As Kamala Harris might say, it's a weird Venn diagram. It's 4:50 now. All right, coming up in the next hour, we do have Jason Miyares joining us just minutes away. And as always, you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. There's a couple of reports going live now. We've been following this news out of Iowa today of a shooting at a high school. And they're beginning to be these early reports. Now, again, this is like I wouldn't place 1,000% stock in all of it just yet, because these are the early hours. It's true of every shooting, and it's certainly true of any time you're trying to identify a suspect. But two different websites, Post Millennial as well as Rebel News. In this case, you've got Hannah Nightingale over at Post Millennial is the author on that piece, and then Ian Miles Chong at Rebel News are both reporting that the shooter in this story appears to have a social media presence that suggests that they are, quote, gender fluid, that their mind has been twisted by this left-wing gender ideology. If that's the case, it wouldn't be the first such attack. Over at Post Millennial, they say that the suspect behind the Perry High School shooting has been reportedly identified as a senior by the name of Dylan Butler, according to a local outlet, WHO 13. Police confirmed the shooter's identity. Several were injured. One boy, a sixth grader, killed. The shooting took place in the morning prior to the start of the school day, during a breakfast program. It was in an Iowa school around 25 miles northwest of Des Moines. And among the injured was the school principal, who was rushed into surgery. The shooter has died as a result of a apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound, according to the police here. But there are these early indications that his social media presence included references to being gender fluid. There's a transgender flag, an LGBTQ plus flag on social media profiles that include his image. There's a picture of him, it's a TikTok account, of him in a bathroom stall. It looks like just before the shooting, looking into the camera, and it says, "Now we wait," on that. TikTok has deleted the account. China moved quickly to remove it. So that's what we know. But again, a developing story out of Iowa. All right, hold tight. I've got Jason Miyares joining us just minutes away.